Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to our NextRoll Town Hall on Google's Privacy Sandbox updates. This presentation is being brought to you by NextRoll. NextRoll is a marketing technology company delivering products ambitious companies use and rely on to grow their business. Powered by machine learning and integrated data platforms, NextRoll's technology serves tens of thousands of businesses globally throughout its business units. Rollworks, an account-based platform for business-to-business marketing and sales teams, and AdRoll, a marketing and advertising platform for business-to-consumer brands. We are a global company. We are headquartered in San Francisco, but have offices throughout the world and remote workers as well.
Thank you, everyone, for attending. My name is Mihir Nanavati. I'm the Chief Innovations and Ecosystems Officer here at NextRoll. And with me today is Andrew Pascoe, our VP of Data Science Engineering and the leader of our efforts in privacy-forward advertising and Privacy Sandbox partnerships with Google. Recently, Google announced a change to the strategy around third-party cookies, changing from what initially was intended to be a complete deprecation of third-party cookies to now an elevated choice for users on opting in or out of third-party cookies. So let's discuss what this means for advertisers, for players in the ecosystem, and for how businesses should prepare going forward. So let me just kick this off by asking Andrew to clarify this change. Andrew, there's been a lot of mention in the industry, in the media, about what this change is and what this could mean for the future of third-party cookies. Before we go into all of the details, can you just give us an overview of what Google announced?
Yeah. So first of all, like a few weeks ago, Google published a blog post. So that was the means by which they made this announcement. If you haven't read it for yourselves, it's actually pretty short and sweet, like 5 or 6 paragraphs, and it's called a new path forward for Privacy Sandbox. And basically, it kind of addresses the fact that many participants in the industry kind of completed an initial test of the Privacy Sandbox. They've received lots of feedback about it from those participants, including us, as well as regulators. And effectively, they decided that what they really wanted to do is let's not talk about deprecating third-party cookies anymore. Let's actually make that a user choice. And for keen observers, Chrome already offers this choice. So you can go into the settings of Chrome and you can turn off third-party cookies for yourself. You can turn off the Privacy Sandbox APIs for yourself. And so when they say elevated, they made that choice of word very intentionally. So what we're expecting is that there's going to be sort of like a more to the forefront user choice in whether or not they want to enable third-party cookies. That's effectively what the announcement is.
Got it. So in that mode where there's much more of a user choice, what does that mean for the future of third-party cookies when it comes to advertising particularly?
Yeah, so there were a lot of just kind of initial kind of gut check reactions when the blog post came out. In particular, there were a lot of headlines about Google giving up on their efforts to deprecate third-party cookies. What does this mean for the Privacy Sandbox? And while it's technically true that Google has given up on fully deprecating third-party cookies, it's really about like this bringing the choice forward. And so we'll have to see how that plays out with what users actually decide and how regulators will continue to be involved. But basically, we think probably a lot of users are going to opt for the private choice.
Got it. And you mentioned the Privacy Sandbox a little bit earlier, Andrew. And the Privacy Sandbox is, of course, like a set of APIs that are intended to be providing technologists and advertisers a way to also, find other ways to support the same objectives without third-party cookies. But this effort has been underway for quite some time. Can you tell me a little bit about what this change that they recently announced is? Does it have any implication to the future work of Privacy Sandbox particularly?
No. We have a close working relationship with Google. They were very clear to us that they are not reducing their investment in the Privacy Sandbox APIs and technologies. We've been involved in helping to develop those technologies ourselves, for 4 years. So that they were very keen to chat with us very early for this announcement, and they assured us there's no reduction in investment here. And part of that is really, as I said, like we kind of expect a lot of users to opt for the private choice. And in order to support the open web, these APIs need to be available and be functional and kind of fill in those gaps. I think that there's some other stuff that maybe kind of might be missing in the broader discussion about these APIs. They are available to all Chrome users, right? It's not just like the privacy APIs, Privacy Sandbox APIs are available just to those who opt out of third-party cookies. Today, those APIs are available on all Chrome browsers. But part of the announcement is really that there's just additional work to do based on the feedback. We also published our own blog post about where we think some future directions and emphasis should be on developing the APIs, the things that they need to fill in. And Google recognizes that there's this additional work to be done. And the regulators are still going to be involved in this Privacy Sandbox initiative as well. They're going to have a say about how these APIs are going, whether or not there's sufficient replacements, or if there's any competitive advantage that Google shouldn't be taking with them, or things like that. Really, the Privacy Sandbox has been an industry-wide effort for, as I said, like 4 years. And a bunch of us are still really, really invested in it. NextRoll and partners that we're working with. So Privacy Sandbox is still kind of good to go, and we're kind of buttoning it up.
Got it. That makes sense. You mentioned earlier this notion of choice for consumers. Do we have any early indications of what this approach from Google in terms of whether it's an opt-in or an opt-out feature for third-party cookies? What might that look like? And when would it be available to all of us who use Chrome?
Yeah, so we don't know that, and also Google doesn't know that. They made this announcement to like the user choice thing is really kind of aligning with data philosophy that has been prevalent in Europe for a while. That is like users should kind of have an understanding of where their data goes and have a choice about where it goes. And so like by elevating this choice, Google, they told us themselves, they don't know if it's an opt-in or opt-out. The regulators are also going to be involved in this decision. So I've been talking about regulators. Just to be clear, Google has some legal commitments with a regulatory body in the UK called the Competition and Markets Authority. That is the CMA. And then related to that, there's the Information Commissioner's Office, the ICO, also in the UK, who are Google doesn't have direct commitments with them, but the ICO is also advising the CMA on where they think they should go. And so because regulators are going to be involved, and because these aspects of the Privacy Sandbox APIs need to be buttoned up, like I was just saying, we don't have a firm timeline on this. It is possible that the regulatory pressures or maybe some technical challenges that we haven't predicted yet kind of show up within the Privacy Sandbox APIs. So there's no clear published timeline. So we're all kind of waiting to see what happens. We meet with Google weekly, and they know that we care about this, and that like clarifying it is one of their top priorities. But they have a lot to work through right now with their partners and these regulatory bodies.
Got it. So even as there is a sense of uncertainty here, how would you suggest how customers who have advertising budgets and advertisers, how should they adjust their strategies, if at all, and how should they be thinking about future plans in light of this change?
I'm going to provide some of like the reasoning before like the specific, maybe changes strategies that folks should take. Like I said earlier, we kind of expect that lots of users are going to pick this private option. This elevated choice, whatever form it takes. We've seen, and these are not perfect comparators, but iOS had this thing, this ATT, where you open an app and it says, hey, as a user, are you willing to allow this app to perform some tracking? And there is about a 70% opt-out rate of tracking on iOS. So that's why we kind of think like, hey, the Privacy Sandbox stuff is still really important, because third-party cookies are going to lose a lot of their reach and potency. Now, it's different than completely deprecating third-party cookies, but probably like it's just going to be much more marginal, their efficacy, than what it is today. So in terms of strategic things that advertisers and marketers can take, we recommend kind of doubling down on first party and zero party data strategies. Essentially, use the data that you've already collected or the things that you know about your clients to find ways of activating and messaging those customers. Really, the Privacy Sandbox APIs in a lot of ways are kind of a first party data activation tool. They've been kind of pitched in like on the sort of private side of things, but there are actually really convenient ways of using them to target target users based on your first party data. And zero party data, like trying to incentivize your clients to provide you more data about themselves would also be prudent, because you can like start to activate on that as well. I think that we also recommend working with a partner. This stuff is pretty complex. It's a change to lots and lots of parts of the ecosystem. Finding a partner to test with and start to like tinker with some strategies earlier rather than later is good. You don't kind of want to be caught off guard, or like these sudden changes might not make sense, or your targeting kind of gets out of whack or something. Definitely try to get involved early, see how you can test. So in some ways, I'd even recommend like accelerating your efforts on these transitions, because even though we don't have a firm timeline, even though we don't know exactly like how many users are going to opt out of third-party cookies, Google is doing this to increase their odds of regulatory approval, right? Them kind of unilaterally saying third-party cookies just won't be available in Chrome is actually like a much bigger move, and potentially a competitive threat to like the rest of the market than it would be to say, you know what, it actually like the choice is in users' hands. So there's like a chance that this might accelerate the importance of those Privacy Sandbox APIs and these new targeting strategies. So yeah, I recommend doing likewise and also accelerating your efforts.
Yeah, that's a very important point, and I agree. I think it's just prudent for everyone to accelerate the momentum and not just keep it, but accelerate it in terms of our readiness. Now, you mentioned partners. So speaking of partners, we, of course, at NextRoll have been working with Google on these initiatives for nearly 5 years now. For the record, let's talk a little bit about how these changes impact what we at NextRoll are planning to help our customers, and are there any things that we're doing differently going forward to make sure our customers have what they need?
We're not really changing our level of investment. We practice what I'm preaching here. We're actually much more likely to accelerate our investment based on what I just said prior. We have completely rebuilt our real-time bidding systems to address these private technologies. we really believe that the future of the web involves a lot more privacy for consumers. We think regulators and governments are asking for this. We believe that consumers are asking for this. We've seen the data on iOS that when given the choice, users prefer the private option. And so we really want to help make this stuff happen. We think it's the right thing to do. And we think that it can be a really good thing for the industry and actually get like a lot of trust back with users and how their data is deployed. We've really cared about this. We've been in the lead, being involved for like the past 4 to 5 years and contributing to the specifications. And we intend to keep that lead, right? It's not just, hey, like, oh, we have to do this. Like we actively want to do it and play a role in it. That being said, there might be like, despite no decrease in investment and like a potential increase in investment, we might like tweak our strategies a little bit. We still care also a lot, like in addition to caring about users in the open web, we care a lot about advertisers and their performance. And what this means is that third-party cookies are going to be around. So we need to treat that as its own unique targeting capability. And we need to find that sort of right balance between all of these different things for the users that say, yeah, like I'm totally happy to have third-party cookies and to get very relevant advertisements to me, and folks can use my granular data, maybe because there's some incentive or something like that. We want to make sure that targeting like works really, really well for that audience, as well as the Privacy Sandbox only audience, right? So yeah, we'll work with our advertisers and like use our expertise in like machine learning and understanding campaign setups and strategies to really strike the right balance between all these things.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for all of these insightful comments around what these changes mean for the industry and for our customers. I'd like to switch gears a little bit and ask you a few questions submitted by the attendees today, and there have been a lot of them. So I'll start with some of the questions that have already been pre-submitted and see if we have time for the new ones that are coming in. So first of all, I know everybody is curious. Just to recap again, is this good news or bad news for advertisers over the long term?
I think it's good news in the shorter term, short to medium term, and it's probably neutral news for the long term. I guess it kind of depends on what we mean by short term and long term. So what makes it good news in the shorter term? It's going to be useful for advertisers to still be able to get that granular data for the users who are okay with it. And the strategies that we see working there probably apply in a similar way to the users who opt for the private choice. And yeah, the measurement is just easier, right? But in the longer run, we really do expect that the private choices are going to be dominant. That, yeah, more users are going to want this. Depending on what level it is possible that third-party cookies, I don't fully expect this, but it is possible that third-party cookies are so marginal that actually deprecating just ends up being the strategy. But I don't know that for sure. So yeah, it's kind of mixed, but certainly short to medium term, I actually think it's good for advertisers.
Got it. Now, one of the other questions that was asked is, does this announcement impact how we approach third-party cookies if we're already preparing for a cookie-less environment entirely?
It's really about striking that balance. Like I kind of mentioned earlier, we're going to have to juggle multiple targeting solutions and in our reporting, deal with like these different levels of granularity. Some targeting is just going to be more powerful in that way than others. And yeah, we need to design for this. This is going to create some I do think this is going to create some additional complexity for advertisers and marketers to also understand and interpret these data. And that's why I recommend, working with a partner to help manage the complexity. But if you've already been kind of preparing for a third-party cookie deprecation, as I said, I highly recommend staying the course or increasing your efforts, just because there's probably going to be less regulatory friction.
Got it. Okay, so the other thing is that Google is, of course, a very critical player in this industry change that's happening, and they seem to be driving this conversation about third-party cookies on Chrome in general. However, there's more to that, right? There's also other identifiers and other approaches that many players in the industry are taking around things like universal IDs or other IDs outside of the Google ecosystem. What is your opinion on the future of those?
Yeah, I obviously during this during the development of Privacy Sandbox, as the specs were being developed and really, really early tests were being done, and even through to the major tests that have happened this year, we've kind of seen this sort of influx of lots of companies saying, "Hey, we've got these cookieless identifiers. This can help solve this problem. We're gonna make sure that folks can get their granular data." We are supportive of consent-based IDs where users actually understand the value exchange that's happening. I don't see anything wrong with that. But we believe at NextRoll that users really should know and be able to control who knows what about them. So from our perspective, it's totally fine. There's probably a bit of a reduction in, you would have reduced reach through these additional IDs from what third-party cookies are capable of today. So yeah, it's fine. However, same thing though, right? In the long run, it is possible that these solutions could also come under more regulatory pressure, right? Like, do users really understand what they're consenting to? Do they actually have control over where their data is going? Are they able to opt out of certain partners selectively or what? So I wouldn't treat this as a full-on substitute strategy. You wouldn't want to have to migrate to a completely new targeting strategy again, right? So I recommend just get involved with the Privacy Sandbox stuff. Regardless, I think it's going to be the bulk of the way to address users, particularly on Chrome, and we'll see what the other browsers end up doing too.
Got it. And so related to consent again, Andrew, you mentioned zero-party, first-party data. Let's expand on that a little bit more. So the question that was raised is, how can brands and advertisers gather data even anonymously, all the while protecting individual user privacy?
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier that in a lot of the ways, the Privacy Sandbox APIs are kind of first-party data activation, like a first-party data activation framework. And there's some misunderstandings around this. There's this notion of interest groups and things like that are in the browser, and you are actually allowed to target based on very, very granular information about users. It's just that data sits in the browser, and it's really not allowed to leave it unless it's in a private or aggregate manner. And so there will be some limitations, like you can't, show an ad that has a person's name in it. But you can say very specifically, I want to show this person this ad for like these very specific reasons. And so first-party data is still totally cool in Privacy Sandbox world, because there's this sort of philosophy that this relationship exists between the users and the advertiser. And really what Privacy Sandbox is trying to solve for is like gathering data about users' general web usage. That is, to know what sites they've been on and what they've been reading, that's more of a privacy violation. The way Google talks about it is cross-site tracking. So yeah, continue to like double down on those first-party data efforts and figuring out ways of activating those. And you can start testing that stuff today, right? And see how it performs. Zero-party data. When I talk about value exchange, it's like, how do we actually incentivize users to offer you their information? That could be through discounts, or maybe by signing up and filling out a form. They get access to more content or perks or things like that. And if it's very clear that, hey, you're doing this so that we can effectively advertise to you in the future, and users really understand that, I think generally we see that folks are actually pretty okay with this. The web is full of a lot of content that people are able to access, and they know that it's advertiser supported. And so people already have this sort of ingrained, like, yeah, there's like a value exchange to be had here. So I would kind of try to tap into that.
Got it. One last question. Let's make this very quick, Andrew. So conversions, our customers are also caring about like the bottom line. How will this impact analytics and our ability to measure conversions?
Yeah, the impact on analytics is actually pretty large. So you won't be able to see anymore specifically which publisher sites led to which conversions, right? Everything kind of needs to go through some type of aggregated form. So you might be able to see which sites led to maybe the most conversions or had the highest likelihood of leading to conversions, but you won't know, hey, this user who converted, they clicked this ad on this publisher site. You might know which ad they clicked, but you won't know where they clicked it, because that's cross-site information. You would learn something about their browsing habits. On top of that, there's this kind of notion called differential privacy. It's a mathematical framework for measuring and protecting privacy that adds noise to data. So conversion funnels will be subject to noised data coming out. So you kind of need to start thinking more statistically about your conversions, as opposed to like super granular, this is exactly the funnel that these users took. And smaller data might require some aggregating up to sort of higher level overarching groupings, aggregates, in order to get meaningful results. Because if the data is too small, then the noise could just drown it out. You wouldn't get a good reading. So there's definitely going to be a lot of adaptation there. But once again, testing early and working with a partner can help you get a sense of how this feels and what it looks like.
Awesome. Well, let's wrap this up. Thank you so much, Andrew, for taking the time to share your perspective on the future of digital advertising and all the changes that are coming. And it's really great to hear a lot of insight and details about the change. Just to recap again, like third-party cookies are going away one way or the other. And it's not through deprecation, but through user choice and an elevated user choice. And we recommend all of us to remain focused on the changes and remain involved in adopting the Privacy Sandbox. It's important that we balance our strategies while respecting users' privacy, while also delivering personalized and relevant content to our customers. So if you all have any further questions after this session, please feel free to email us at marketing@nextroll.com. Thank you again for taking the time and attending this session. Have a great day.